Hi, Marilyn Bedell here with Marilyn Kirtley, enjoying some of the experiences that Marilyn Kirtley has had through the years with thumb picking.
Yep.
Marilyn Kirtley, one other question. We have a wonderful park down in Powderly that is called Paradise Park. It's a step back in time. Can you tell us how Paradise Park came to be?
Well, again, the way I remember it, sometimes my memory doesn't serve me right. But my son Rodney was elected the judge in Muhlenberg County, the judge executive. So, one of the first things that he wanted to do was to see all the land that belonged to the county. So he goes to the PVA office and has them to make a list of all the property in the county that Muhlenberg County owns. So when he was looking over it, then he wanted to decide what would be the best thing for each piece of property to be used. The only park that Muhlenberg County had at that time was a little piece of land up by the Rochester Dam, which is now the John Prine Park, which it has been preserved through the years. So one day, he went looking at all the different pieces of property. When he looked at the area where the park is today, he thought this would make a wonderful park. It was filled with trees, it was grown up with bushes. So one day he took a piece of, now one of the other people who was involved told me this story. They said that Rodney bought a roll of yellow tape and went to the county garage and had a talk with the county employees and told them what he had in mind, that he had found a piece of property that he wanted to make a park out of. And if they would be willing to spend maybe some extra time and help prepare the property to be a park. So one of the guys told me one day, said we looked at each other and shook our heads and said, he's lost his mind. But they all went in, and he went in and tied a yellow ribbon around every tree that he wanted to preserve, with orders for them to cut everything else out. So Clarence Brewer, Bobby Anderson, and I really shouldn't name names because I really don't remember who all was, but I do know that those people were involved. So everybody worked together and built the park. So then Rodney started looking for buildings to move into. Of course, the first building they wanted was Merle Travis's birthplace. So they go to Rosewood and find the house where Merle Travis was born. They cut it in two and hauled it on 2 different truckloads. That truck back then, I was down there, and that truck backed in between trees, and they started putting the house back together. And then it was preserved and built. And I think the next building was the Spring Ridge School. It was moved here from Central City. It was out on the River Road. And then the next building was a shotgun house. His dream was to make the park a living mining community with a school, a house, a shotgun house, because that's where all the miners lived, was in a shotgun house, and a mercantile. So we got the Merle Travis house first, and then I think the Spring Ridge School, and then the shotgun house, and we needed a pavilion. So when my husband passed away, he had already made plans to build a pavilion. The pavilion's in the little town of Clifty. We'd go by there and he'd say, we just gotta have one of those in the park. So one day we stopped and made all the measurements and everything, and And he came home with the idea of trying to raise funds to build a pavilion. Well, he passed away. And for his memorial gifts, I requested that his memorial gifts be for a pavilion in Paradise Park. So the people were very generous, and we had a nice contribution. And then it didn't pay for all of it, so then the Thumbpickers made a contribution, and then the family finished up with the rest of it, so we have the nice pavilion. Then after the pavilion, we needed one more thing. We needed a mercantile. And so the Forsyth family came forward, and one of the Forsyth cousins, Preston, who's been very valuable to the park, and they moved the mercantile building from Browder, brick by brick, and the Forsyth family paid for over $100,000 to move that building. So upstairs we have a coal museum, which we wanted to have a coal museum in maybe a different building, but it's turned out very well that the coal museum is upstairs in the mercantile building, and downstairs is various things that people have donated.
Well, and I understand that the United Miners had their union meetings upstairs in that building too, so it's appropriate that it is a coal mining museum now.
Yeah, so it's not only a mercantile, but it was a union hall.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, through the years, we've had improvements, and so one of the best things of the recent years is that you formed a park committee. Now the park committee is very active, and you've moved away, but we really appreciate all the things that you've done, and the park has been very well taken care of now. And
thank you. One other thing let's talk about. Thank you for those comments. I appreciate that. The stage. Tell us about the stage.
Oh, the stage was built. We wanted to have picking in the park. We were having picking in the park on the courthouse square. That's what they do down in Arkansas when they have the Merle Travis thing down there. So Rodney attended in Arkansas, and he came back with, we've got to have a stage in the park. So every Friday night during the summer for several years we had picking in the park. But the building was built by the Job Corps, and a lot of the lumber was donated. I'm really not sure who donated the lumber, but I do know that the Job Corps constructed the building. And then a few years later, the stage really wasn't large enough, and so some of the stage has been added on from the original ones. And then Mary Rainwater, who kept us going in Drakesboro, she wanted to sell concessions, and she bought an Amish building herself. That building belonged to Mary Rainwater.
Really?
So she outgrew it. My husband couldn't wait to go down there on Friday night and eat a hamburger. He said Mary's hamburgers were the best hamburgers in the world. And she made homemade ice cream. And so her little business was very successful. So she ordered a bigger building. And she gave Rodney the smaller building and told him to do whatever he wanted to it. If he left it, he needed it there, or he could sell it, it was his. So they moved it over by the Merle Travis house and used it for storage. But then Eddie Pennington found 90 chairs somewhere. So we had it filled full of chairs, but I had bought a storage building to go up by the pavilion. It was broken into, and several tables and chairs were stolen. So we decided not to keep tables and chairs in the park. That was a bad event. Anyway, Mary Rainwaters had her ice cream and hamburgers every Friday night, and we enjoyed picking in the park. I think that the committee wants to start it over again.
I think so too. I think that's in the
And-
works.
Well, there's so many other concerts, like this Friday night, tomorrow night's going to be a concert at Luray. And then the next night there'll be another concert on the square in Greenville. So we have a lot of competition, but we still love thumb picking, and we'll go if they have it.
And
But the park has been very successful. It's so popular because of the shade. So thank goodness that the big shade trees were saved. And there's been a more recent work done on some of the buildings. And we have a county judge now that cooperates with us. We have to remember that the property and the buildings belong to the county. It belongs to Muhlenberg County and the people. We like to see the little children playing in the playground, and it's marked off now where you can't drive through, and that's because of the children playing in the park. But that's who needs to be there.
so it continues to improve, and Paradise Park is a good place to come and visit. So thank you. I'd like to ask her now what she could tell us about how the Merle Travis Music Center came to be and some of the history of that.
Well, the committee and all the Thumbpickers enjoyed playing outside in the summer in the park, but they also dreamed of having an auditorium for a performing arts center. So it was discussed a long time, and so they finally decided we're going to do it. So the first person, they applied for a grant from our state senator, and we didn't make any headway. But again, here comes Ted Jones. Ted Jones was a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., and he said, I think I can...
And a thumb picker.
And a thumb picker. And he said, I think that we can be put in a bill somewhere, and I'll work on it. So one day, Rodney got the call to come to Washington, D.C. and bring Alonzo and their guitars. And he had set up a meeting with Senator Ted Stevens of Alaska, who was the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. So Ted had hotel rooms for Rodney and Alonzo. They flew up there, and Ted had them separate rooms. They thought they'd room together, but they were living it up. So the next morning they got up and called a cab and gave the cab driver the address to where they wanted to go. And the cab driver said, you have the wrong address because you can't go there. So Rodney looked at the address again. He said, well, this is the address I have. And he said, why don't you take us there and let us see? So the cab driver said, this is a private club, and I don't think you'll be able to get in. Well, they had their guitars with them. They said, well, we'll see. Anyway, when they got there, Ted Jones was waiting for them, the Senator Ted Stevens, and Rodney doesn't even pick very well, but he pretended to pick, and Alonzo did all the picking, and they really impressed Senator Ted Stevens. So he was able to put the funding in a bill, and we got a check for a few cents below $1 million. So then they found an architect and told them how many they wanted to see. And anyway, the rest of the story is that we have pictures in the scrapbook of all the groundbreaking and everything. And they worked very hard on getting everything together. But we do have one of the nicest little performing arts centers
Seats a little over 300 people, I believe. Is that right?
I'm sorry?
A little over 300 people can be seated. Is that right?
Yes.
And the inside is painted black because
It represents the inside of a coal mine.
dark as a dungeon.
Dark as a dungeon.
A Merle Travis song.
Right.
The scrapbook you mentioned of the construction of the Merle Travis Music Center, is that in the Hall of Fame house?
I hope so. I haven't been in the Hall of Fame house for quite a while, but I have dozens of scrapbooks.
Just to document anyone who wants to see these scrapbooks, the Hall of Fame house that we're talking about is a little shotgun house in Paradise Park in Powderly, Kentucky, and there's a phone number listed that you can call and have access to see all of the memorabilia. Anything else about the Merle Travis?
Well, it's been a pleasure for me. As I said before, I've been able to attend so many things and go so many places, and all because of thumb picking. And I made so many new friends. That's the main thing, is the friends that I have. And we shall continue every first Saturday night of the month in Drakesboro. And Scott Taylor keeps us together. And Paul Mosley, Jim Beanie,
Larry
Chris
Shaw.
Liddell, I don't want to name them because I'll leave somebody out. But anyway, every first Saturday of the month, we gather in Drakesboro, and the ladies bring the food, and we invite everybody to come. So it's going to continue.
And if you want information about that, you can go online and Google Kentucky Thumbpickers, and there's a Kentucky Thumbpicker website that has the events that are coming up and tells you the time and location to attend.
But we invite everybody to come and participate. Now, the city of Drakesboro has a monument, a fountain, and a plaque, all dedicated to Mo Schrager. It's in front of Mo Schrager's old house. There's a monument there to him. And so Drakesboro is really the home of thumb picking. And Central City is the home of the Everly Brothers and John Prine, and tomorrow we'll have a big event in Central City. We'll cut the ribbon on Festival Square. And we hope everybody will be able to be there, and it's just going to be a reminder of the Everly Brothers and John Prine's participation and what it has done for the community. But the Muhlenberg Miracle, which is the community college, is the best thing that ever came out of all of it.
The proceeds from the festival went to the foundation, and the foundation funded the college, right?
Exactly.
The other, let's wrap this up. The other thing I always like to say about Thumbpickers is that it's a family really of sharing. So many venues compete with one another. You hear about ballerinas pushing one another around to get them out of the way so they can get the limelight. And the Thumbpickers are just the opposite of that. They love sharing licks, and from all down the line, they will continue sharing licks. And I just watched a special the other day about Tommy Emmanuel talking about Chet Atkins mentoring him. And if you've ever watched Tommy Emmanuel, he mentors all the young people and the young thumbs down in Chet Atkins. So thank you, Marilyn.
Well, the first time I went to the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society, Merle Travis's name was mentioned almost more than Chet's. And that's what surprised me, that Merle Travis was known the world over.
And still is.
And he still is.
Thank you.